Hey, Mike. Mike, I'm talking to you. Pay attention. If you're gonna be a soldier, you need to pay attention. Now, tell me one thing. Are you Shinra? Or are you Avalanche? I need to know, and I think you do too.
Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame's best party!
I was informed backstage a few minutes ago that our three contestants, Ken, Brad, and Jerome, wanted to relieve some of the tension, and they said we must do the program without trousers. Now, can we get a camera behind to make sure that they have done the same as I?
What is Keybertzilla, which is Alex Trebek backwards?
I heard that sends you back to another dimension.
Let's wrap for 800, please.
6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot bunch. Young money militia, and I am the commissioner. You don't want to start wheezy because the F is for finisher.
The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, I think, said it best when he wrote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And that's what we need to do. Take that single step so that future generations of Americans, our descendants, will be able to look back at us and say, you know what? Our grandparents had some tough decisions to make. But because they made those decisions, the world is a better place in which to live. I think all of us need to look at our country and figure out whether America lives up to the ideal America that we have here and here. If it doesn't, if there's room for improvement, and there always is, let us act. Is the image of America that is projected abroad one that we feel comfortable with? Or is there a way in which we can become better neighbors? I truly believe that if each and every one of us takes that single step, one step at a time, then before too long, each and every one of you will be able to say, you know what? I think I'm worthy of the Spirit of Americanism Award. But for this year, and thanks to the DAR, the award is mine, and I'm happy to accept it. I accept it with humility, and I accept it with a great deal of pride. Thank you very much, and God bless America.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, and I'm not alone as I trek through this. Well, it's been an interesting week, to say the very least. I'm joined with my good friend, co-host, brother from another mother. I'm joined with...
Alex, the producer.
And as you heard off the top of the show, that was our audio tribute to the late and great Alex Trebek, longtime host of the television show Jeopardy! Also a Canadian export to the United States, as far as I understand.
He was, what was he, up north? Something like that?
Yeah, he did stuff on the CBC, I think, for a while, and then he went to the States, hosted a bunch of game shows, and just became a part of the pop culture landscape during his entire career, often parodied on Saturday Night Live to fantastic results by Will Ferrell.
And to be honest, Kenan Thompson doing the Black Jeopardy version. He was from Sudbury. That's what I thought.
Yeah, like
so up north, but not the crazy north, but pretty damn far north.
Yeah, The Big Nickel is the other nickname for that town if you happen to be from outside of Canada. We learned about his passing as of this recording this morning. You're hearing this on Monday morning. So the news is just a little over 24 hours old. He passed away from stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which is unfortunately the same cancer that killed my father-in-law, David, last Christmas.
Yeah.
He survived longer than my father-in-law did. The prognosis is generally not good, though he did survive longer than Dave.
There's so many different specific and rare types of pancreatic cancer that it can be, anywhere from a 1% to a 9 or 10% chance of survival, but it's probably on the market as one of the lowest chances of survival from any type of cancer, because of pancreas, you need it to live.
Yeah.
It's like people always think of liver or cancer as like, oh, that's the death sentence because it goes through the whole body. Your pancreas is what controls your blood sugar through your whole body.
Yeah.
And it will affect you rapidly.
Yeah, because my father-in-law was diagnosed at the same time he was back in March 2019. My father-in-law passed away on December 4th of last year. And it gets aggressive quick. Although with Trebek, his tumors had shrunk by 50% by May of that year, and he was recording Jeopardy up until last week.
So that was that was my mother works in the healthcare field with the elderly, and she was saying when we were watching the news that she goes, with that type of cancer, they would see it at the homes. That somebody would get diagnosed on Friday, and sometimes they're gone by Sunday.
Yeah, so it all depends on how it hits you. I think we will be talking a little bit more about this during our news segment. Another thing to talk about, the big elephant in the room, which, as far as I know, things are still going, but we got to talk about it anyway. The U.S. election has been called in favor of Democratic nominee Joe Biden with an overwhelming majority with the popular vote and the Electoral College, which I still don't quite understand.
Okay, so I was doing a lot of research. You want to know the quick lowdown on it? Each state, when they were joining the union, it represented the electoral seats were based on like population distribution in those and the size of those states at the time. So it's similar to how our system works, our representative system, which is still kind of broken too, but theirs is kind of really broken because it'll give a state that has, 1 million people in it, the same power or equal power as a state that has 20 million people. So it doesn't matter what the popular vote is. And that's broken because you honestly can't let a minority part of the population decide what the majority of the population should have.
Yeah,
that's not how a democracy works.
Yeah, and I think John Oliver on Last Week Tonight did a big special on gerrymandering and all that things. It's complicated, but
yeah, and regardless, whose side you're on, there's people that are going to be upset right now of with the results either way. There's some people that are going to be happy. A lot of people are going to be happy. There's some people that are like, well, that's not the best candidate that could have been. It doesn't matter if it was the best candidate that you thought. It's the candidate that won.
Yes, and hopefully, because I watched the speech on Saturday night, and no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, the speech spoke to the idea of mending bridges, building relationships, and getting over the demonization that has happened over the last couple of years. And hopefully things will change for the better. There's a lot of work, and I've had this conversation on my personal Facebook, and I'll say it here too. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of problems within the institution. There's a lot of systemic racism. There's a lot of people that are not equally represented. And there's a lot of things to make up for, but the work can begin.
Yeah. And it won't, it's nothing is solved overnight. There very well could be, and very likely will be, a immense struggle to get anything done.
Unless unless something happens in Georgia in like the early January or something.
No, we're talking the next 4 years.
Yeah,
let's say everything turns out the way it's turning out, and these lawsuits go nowhere, and all this stuff happens, and then they drag Trump out, by his chinny chin chin, and he goes and then tries to campaign for 2024. Half of the country still likes him. I don't know how. Anybody in the rest of the world doesn't know how. Do you think that if Trump had been projected to win, that he would have had these kinds of congratulations this time? For that immediately after Biden gets nominated in, that the entire world of all world leaders are thanking him for getting in, thanking the American people because the isolationist, the crazy rhetoric that was going on before. Like, this is, Americans have to realize that when they elect a president, and because they're a global power, that whatever they choose to do and who they choose to get in there affects the entire world in a very dramatic amount. And they've got to start thinking of world governance in that they don't control the world, by governance, but what they do trickles down to how it affects every other country will end up voting and doing things too. And if you're well liked as a president worldwide, good things will happen for the American economy. If you're not well liked, bad things happen. So it's going to be very interesting. I would say, watching the news the next week to 2 weeks, and then the last week of January. And then after that, it'll be a lot of, conspiracy theories and crazy stuff happening, but it'll be in the periphery.
Yeah. So regardless, there's work to be done. There is time.
I have a question. What's your favorite mean nickname that you've heard people call Trump?
Tangerine Palpatine.
Yeah, Tangerine Palpatine. Tangerine Mussolini works too. But my personal favorite is President Pig Shit. I heard people say, it's like, oh, President Pig Shit. And I'm like, that's incredibly mean and incredibly astute.
Very on brand. Very on brand.
Okay.
But we will refrain from talking from a lot of this, but we do have a story this week that does tie into it. It is kind of funny, and it doesn't involve either candidate. So we will talk about that a little bit later. Other than that, it has been a wonderful week for us here at the TWIG Studios as we prepare for next generation console launch. Later on today, you will be hearing me and Alex's first impression review of Assassin's Creed Valhalla on the Xbox One. I'm reviewing it on the original Xbox VCR. Alex reviewed it on an Xbox S.
It was the all digital edition with using an external drive, so slightly different experience.
So yeah, we will be talking about that a little bit later on today. We will have a full review of that game when we have Series X hardware, just because we'll talk about it in our review.
Well, and also I was provided a copy to work on the PlayStation platform as well, so that will give us time to sort of compare my save files between platforms.
Yes, and we will also have Watch Dogs coverage, Legion, probably before the end of the month. Just, again, it's a launch. Give us some time.
Yeah, so think about that. We've got those two, and I still have to work on the next-gen part of my review for Yakuza Like a Dragon. So we've got those, plus the launch day titles.
Yeah, I'll be working through Spider-Man.
Please be patient with us. We'll try to get stuff out. In my case, if I'm working like a madman, you might have a short prototype review every 2 to 3 days over the course of November.
I'm also currently working on a review. I think I can say this. I'm pretty sure I can. I'm working on a review of Cyberpunk Red, the RPG. I'm going to be reading that this week. So I should have, I think the book comes out on the 14th. So sometime next week. So Monday, right? Yeah, Monday.
You said what day is it coming out? Sorry,
I think it's digital on the 14th, physical on the 19th. I think,
which would be next Saturday.
Yeah. So either way, you'll have a review of that fairly soon. Also, one thing I want to send a shout out to Free League Publishing and Modifius. These guys sent over something awesome for our holiday gift guide consideration, but also, I guess, as a thank you. They sent me a copy of the Alien Starter Set. not the core book, but the essentially like the D&D box set for Alien. But they also sent me a copy of Destroyer of Worlds, which is the adventure I reviewed earlier this year, which has my name in it on page 28. As I'm I'm one of the marshals who helps the Marines track down the four escaped kind of fugitives. So that's pretty cool. I have my name in print, and it's in thousands of people's hands around the world. So that's pretty cool.
That's neat, man.
Yeah. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about off the top of the show. Hopefully you enjoy that little bit of an audio Easter egg I put at the beginning from Final Fantasy VII Remake. And we have a lot of stuff to talk about this week. We got a lot of news, reviews. We got stuff from Arrow Video, Nintendo, and I think PDP. Yep. So stay tuned here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman.
Wait, quickly. Yeah. I have breaking email. You know how when you're a podcast, you'll sometimes get stats on, who's listening, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I got an email since we've switched over websites and everything, and from a tracking service that says, congratulations, you're actually ranking very well. And I'm like, okay, cool. Where? In Croatia.
Good for us.
we are these are for the category of entertainment news. We are ranked number 7 in Croatia right now, or the last month or so. The ranked 7th also in Ghana. 12th in Denmark.
Okay.
30th in entertainment news in Japan. Cool.
That's cool.
I actually had noticed a pickup of listenership there since we went to Spotify.
Neat.
And 39th in Singapore.
Thanks,
so
guys.
Neat. They just said, we thought you'd like to know from our stats. Neat.
Thanks, guys. That's kind of cool. So we're big with people in Croatia.
In Croatia, random parts of Europe, Japan. It's kind of neat that, and Ghana and everything. It's neat that, what that means in like Ghana, there might only be 10 downloads, but it means that, for the market that we're in, they're liking us.
Already on. I'll take it.
Because I had noticed Japan. I was like, we had like a couple people that would listen, and consistently pop ups like, you have 2 downloads for this week's show in Japan, and then it started jumping up more and more. I'm like, something in Japan must have happened, and all I could think of was maybe they started listening to us on Spotify.
I'm not gonna complain about it.
Exactly. So there we go. Good news. And you were worried that I was going to say something weird.
I really was. I was genuinely afraid. So anyway, guys, keep it locked here to ThisWeekInGeek.net. We're going to take a trip down to the mall. This is our review of Mallrats Limited Edition.
But my cousin Walter jerked off in public once. True story. He was on a plane to New Mexico when all of a sudden the hydraulics went. The plane started spinning around, going out of control, so he decides it's all over and whips it out and starts beating it right there. So all the other passengers take a cue from him, and they start whipping it out and beating like mad. So all the passengers are beating off, plummeting to their certain doom, when all of a sudden, the hydraulics kick back in and the plane rights itself. It lands safely, and everyone puts their pieces or whatever, away and deboard. Nobody mentions the phenomenon to anyone else.
Well, did he come or what?
Jesus Christ, man. There's just some things you don't talk about in public.
Hey guys, this is Mike the Birdman here, and I'm here to talk about the latest release from Arrow Video. We're talking about Mallrats Limited Edition on Blu-ray. This is a film I have a huge appreciation for. I first heard about Kevin Smith back in the 90s when an old girlfriend of mine told me to go rent Clerks, and then I subsequently rented Mallrats and Chasing Amy over the course of like a weekend or two, and I really fell in love with his work. And then, as some of you may know, I then went later have my own run-in with Kevin Smith in my personal life, where I was on AMC's Comic Book Men back in 2013 or 2014. I was on the Brony episode. But that aside, Mallrats is probably one of my favorite movies of Kevin Smith's. And as Kevin talks about in some of the special features for this, the movie was really representative of what would happen to comic book movies and pop culture now. I mean, there are any number of people in our lives that I'm sure represent the Brody Bruce we all know. In fact, if you're listening to this podcast, odds are you are a Brody Bruce-like character, hopefully with a little bit more tact and a little bit more suaveness when it comes to dealing with whatever personal relationships you have in your life. This is a new version of it, though a lot of the archival special features have come over, such as the making of, the audio commentary and stuff like that. But there are a lot of new special features here as well. There's like a almost half an hour conversation long with Kevin Smith, where he talks about his making of the movie and some of his memories. There is a tribute to producer Jim Jacks, who's one of the guys, I think, on Animal House, and Kevin talks about how loyal he was and how they always wanted to make a Mallrats 2. It was basically Die Hard, but in a mall. There's a new interview with Jason Mewes. There's a really cool little feature out with the director of photography talking about how he literally had almost no experience. This is like one of his first features that like he ever worked on and all that. And then working in the mall where they shot this in Minnesota, I think it was. And there's another. This one is kind of weird. There's a little animated feature, and it's talking about Hollywood of the North, and it's like all the different random people who worked on this movie. Some of these people worked, I think, on the Mighty Ducks movie too. And it's just random people like people who worked in props or people who worked on production design, stuff like that. It's weirdly interesting, and I've just never seen interviews done in an animated fashion like this. I was kind of hoping they would draw them like the A View Askewniverse characters, but whatever. It's still an entertaining listen, to say the very least. Some of the other contents you can also take a look on here is there is deleted scenes, there's outtakes and behind the scenes footage, there's old cast interviews, there's a music video which is Build Me Up Buttercup, and then on the second disc there is the television cut of this movie, which evidently was shown on like ABC when like Ben Affleck's career was just about to really take off with like Armageddon. And it's weird. And by weird, I mean, obviously this was shown on like ABC or something. So they have like, Jason Mewes, some of his lines are overdubbed by a completely different actor. And it's so weird because sometimes Jay will be talking and where he might say something like, you know, motherfucker or something, they'll overdub it. And by the way, they also use the word holy snot a lot in this. It's really weird. But it's just so jarring. Like, the television cut is really strange. There actually is an introduction that Kevin talks about the process because he never has had a television cut of one of his movies. And I would presume this introduction was shot this year. As far as I know, this is his only television cut, because I can't imagine how you would make a television cut of a Kevin Smith movie. Maybe you could get away with... Actually, no. I was about to say you could maybe do Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, but nope. Yeah, no. But this is a pretty solid package. I was actually really surprised at the level of detail that these guys went into with this particular release at Arrow Video. And Kevin Smith even talks about if anyone's going to do this right, it's going to be Arrow. And I have to agree. When Arrow goes to bat for features that it really cares about, I'm tremendously impressed. So I think Mallrats Limited Edition on Blu-ray is definitely worth your time. If you have the original version of this, I actually do think it's worth upgrading just for the new special features and interviews, and having, like, if you want a crap ton of dailies, yeah, they're from a really poor copy of a VHS thing I presume Kevin had in his archives, but it's nice to see these little film pieces of history still be restored. So once again, if you want to pick up Mallrats Limited Edition, you can get that from Arrow Video.
Oh, son of Jarrell! Kneel before Sod! Snoochie boochies.
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
This Week in Geek
News. Welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I am Mike the Birdman. He's Alex, the producer. All right, guys, we have a lot to cover this week in the news, and surprisingly enough, it's not entirely bad. It's interesting, although we're going to start with our sad thing. As we mentioned off the beginning of the show, we did have our audio tribute to the late, great Alex Trebek, and he died yesterday at the age of 80. So I'm getting this story courtesy of TMZ. Alex Trebek, the revered and beloved Jeopardy host since 1984, whose calm but witty presence was must-see television for millions of Americans, has died, TMZ has learned. A Jeopardy spokesperson tells TMZ Jeopardy is saddened to share that Alex Trebek passed away peacefully at his home early this morning. That would be yesterday, surrounded by family and friends. The TV icon had been battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer since announcing the news back in March 2019. He immediately started chemo after the diagnosis, but made no plans to retire and continued hosting the game show as impressively as ever. Trebek powered through a full year despite what he called massive attacks of Great Depression that made me wonder if it was really worth fighting on, because he realized giving up on life would be a betrayal to his wife, God, and other cancer patients. He pointed out the odds of surviving a second year with pancreatic cancer were just 7%, but he'd hoped he'd be able to celebrate that milestone too. Sadly, he took a turn for the worse. Alex continued to host Jeopardy, recently beginning his 37th season, and earlier this year he shot the epic Greatest of All Time tournament on primetime television. Ken Jennings, who won that GOAT tournament, reacted to Alex's passing, saying, "Alex wasn't just the best ever at what he did, he was also a lovely and deeply decent man, and I'm grateful for every minute I got to spend with him." Ken's competitor, James Holzhauser, added, "It was one of the great privileges of my life to spend time with this courageous man while he fought the battle of his life. You will never be replaced in our hearts, Alex." Jeopardy says Alex hosted episodes will air through December 25th. His last day taping in studio was on October 29th. The show's executive producer, Mike Richards, says working beside him for the past year and a half as he heroically continued to host Jeopardy was an incredible honor. His belief in the importance of the show and his willingness to push himself to perform at the highest level was the most inspiring demonstration of courage I've ever seen. After his initial diagnosis, there were several ups and downs for Alex. In May 2019, he announced his tumors had shrunk more than 50%, obviously a great sign of progress, but his numbers declined and he began another round of chemotherapy a few months later. Still, he maintained a positive outlook and did a lot of good throughout his ordeal. His soothing and reassuring voice was on display when he announced having cancer. Trebek, who signed on to host the show through 2022, joked, "Truth be told, I have to, because under the terms of my contract, I have to host Jeopardy for another 3 more years." His commitment to the game show was a two-way street. When Alex took a brief medical leave in 2018 to have emergency blood clots on his brain after a nasty fall, Jeopardy never aired episodes with a guest host. He also suffered a mild heart attack in 2007 and 2012. Alex started his career on the Canadian Broadcast Corporation in 1961, announcing the news, and quickly gained fame after hosting the high school quiz show Reach for the Top. He introduced himself to the U.S. audiences in 1973, where he hosted a new NBC show called The Wizard of Odds. That would lead to work on a variety of game shows, including High Rollers with his trademark curly hair and Classic Stash, with a brief fill-in stint for Chuck Woolery on Wheel of Fortune. Then came the Jeopardy gig. As a revival of an old show came up, Alex got the call. The show gained immense popularity with Alex at the helm, dominating the evening game show biz along with Wheel. Alex, a winner of 6 daytime Emmys for Outstanding Game Show Host, set a Guinness World Record in 2014 for most episodes, 6,829 of a game show hosted. Despite his unprecedented and hugely successful run, Alex never viewed himself as a celeb or star of the show. He said as much to Harvey Levin for an episode of Objectified. And, let me see if there's a little bit more here. Alex also told Levin he was seriously considering retirement before signing a contract extension. He seemed serious at the time, naming 2 potential replacements. LA King announcer Alex Faust, and CNN legal analyst Laura Coates. Important to note, Jeopardy producers say they're not announcing a new host right now. Trebek was born July 22nd, 1940 in Ontario, Canada, as you said, in Sudbury. He majored in philosophy at the University of Ottawa, but he had a serious ambitions about a career on TV. He became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1998, but not before running the Olympic torch in 1996 as it made its way to Atlanta. Alex, who was named an Officer of the Order of Canada in 2017 for his iconic achievements, married Elaine Karras in 1974. They divorced in 1981. He married again in 1990, this time to Jean Curvin, whom he had 2 children, Matthew and Emily. He was 80 years old.
Sad to see him go. As far as, who they're going to get to replace him, I
don't know.
Do they go the route of having Drew Carey do double duty and have him be like the Game Show Reaper, where he comes in and takes over for all the old dead guys? Sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but like who would they get? That you got to have somebody serious, and I don't think casting somebody else with the same name, like the first choice was another Alex, that's in poor taste. As dumb as that sounds, I think it would just be, people would see it that way. I don't know if you go with a mustache or if you go with I don't know if gender bending, for the sake of, would be good. You have to find somebody who is a perfect straight person host for that. And somebody that's like around, not that age, like somebody who's like in their 50s maybe, usually is what you go with that kind of an intellectual show host.
I think you could get away with maybe on April Fool's Day in a year if Will Ferrell wanted to do it.
As to guest it, or April Fool's, or as an anniversary, or as a tribute. They could do a tribute where it's anybody who has parodied him, in jest or whatever, have them guest host, or you could go like pick somebody who is a semi-retired actor who would like to have that as sort of their final gig for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Usually it's like stand-up comedians. I'm trying to think who would be perfect for it. A lot of the stand-up comedians either are too old or they've gotten in trouble.
I think if you got someone young but doesn't have obviously any scandals, you want someone very wholesome, because Jeopardy has a certain pedigree, I would say, within the cultural kind of fabric.
How about what's that guy that's basically like young version of Seinfeld? Mulaney?
He wouldn't be a terrible choice.
He dresses in suits. He's family friendly. He doesn't come across as like unintelligent. You get him maybe, or you go with
not Steve Harvey.
No, it's a little too. Like, he's too over the top.
Yeah. You need someone who can portray a witty intellectual.
Well, do you go with the guy that hosted Family Feud for a while? Not
Richard Karn?
Not Richard Karn, or is it Hollywood Squares? The guy that played Elaine's boss.
John O'Hurley.
Yeah. I mean, you go there, or do you go with, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Maybe you pick somebody who's hosted other things before. And it can't be like, it's not an over the top kitschy thing. Like, you wouldn't want like a Wayne Brady. You want
class to the role. You need a certain degree of seriousness. Actually, I know who I'd want to do it, but it's a choice that probably won't be popular, and you're going to look at me sideways.
Are you going to say Dennis Miller?
No, John Rhys Davies. The guy from Sliders.
He's too old. They don't want another guy. They don't want another guy dying too soon.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's the problem. He's too old, but he portrays that intellectual, and he's funny.
Yeah, they don't want you to be snarky though. Like the only reason that Alex Trebek was able to get away with that was because he was on for so long. So when he had a witty marker, if he came back at somebody, it was funny. It wasn't meant to be mean. You don't want the role to be turned into a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, weird choice, but you know who might be good for it?
Who?
Older stand-up comedian, not that old. He's only, I think, in his 60s. Tony Danza.
I could see that.
But if you want, and he's a teacher, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you don't go like Ben Stein would have been good, but he's old too. So again, they don't want to go elderly. So I think like a Mulaney or I'm trying to think like who. You don't want somebody loud. You don't want somebody brash. You don't want. And again, if you are willing to go a little older, not like in their like 70s yet, Dan Aykroyd.
That'd be an interesting pick. I just don't know whether he portrays the warmth that you need, though.
Yeah, okay. If you're not going to go, yeah, you're right. Maybe there. But yeah, you got to look at some of these stand-up comedians that were maybe popular in the 80s or 90s that have sort of left favor, not because of anything wrong with them. They're just maybe not, as popular anymore. So they can be quippy and do well. Actually, you know who might be a good host?
Who?
Because he's played dummies a lot, but I honestly think fucking Joey from Friends.
Oh, Matt LeBlanc. Okay.
Matt LeBlanc, or if he could, I don't know if he's coked out still or anything.
Matthew Perry?
Yeah.
I would go Matt LeBlanc because he can be funny. He can be very charming.
And he can be serious when he wants to be. Like, he's done it. It's just not as common. You got to go with somebody in their 50s. Or if you're going to go young, like if you want somebody on there for a long time, you pick a fairly clean-cut comedian who can come across as intellectual that isn't going to... You got to make sure they don't make a joke every single time they talk.
Yeah. I mean, like, for example, you couldn't get John Oliver because you're expecting a quip at the end of everything.
Yes, and for the same reason, you couldn't go with a clean-cut guy like Jim Gaffigan.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're still touring, they're still popular, and their whole shtick is always being, on like that. You could go the route, if somebody wants to do double duty, pick one of the late night hosts that's already sort of running stuff. Pick like, I don't know, what's a good example? Go with like a Seth Meyers or somebody.
But say, yeah, all right, I could see that.
Go with somebody like that that's young, that still has their show and is willing to maybe pull double duty, make some extra money. I forget, are they a network show or are they syndicated?
They are syndicated, and I think I want to say it's CBS that does it. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure.
So yeah, but again, like I would say, pick somebody in their early 40s to early 50s. Pick somebody who can be funny, has charisma and charm, cleans up well and wears a suit because it's one of the shows where you still have to wear a suit. Who can crack a joke now and then if they have to, but has to play it straight the whole time and keep the audience captivated. It's actually a pretty hard mix.
I thought of a pick. It would be funny to a certain segment of people, but I love his on-screen charisma. Robert Picardo, the doctor from Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah, and again, and if we're good choice, and if we were to, let's say, flip it, and you wanted to go with a woman host, or if you wanted, like, with that route, there's a lot of choices that we weren't thinking of because we were just thinking of, I think of the show and I think mustache. So I don't necessarily think woman, but there's a ton of different women. There's actually a lot of hosts that could go on there that would be great. It's just a matter of finding somebody who's not working on a major show already or movie, or a big stand-up person already. Somebody who I think would be able to jump in and do quite well. But again, she's maybe getting a little bit on the older side, would be like Allison Janney.
Yeah.
She has that. She can be funny, quippy. She can be serious. There's plenty of women that could do it. So but the problem is when I think of great TV hosts or TV personalities that are women, a lot of them are already older.
Yeah. I mean, I thought of one from Saturday Night Live. She did Third Rock from the Sun. I think her name was Jane Curtin. I want to say
she's like 80.
Yeah, but say that's unfortunate because I love her.
Whoopi's in her late 60s or early 70s.
Yeah.
Whoopi would have been a great host.
Yep.
There's so many of these women, but it's like you have these really young people that are really active, and you have a lot of older people that are active. But I can't think of too many that are in
that middle ground, right?
Yeah, in that middle ground that would really fit that profile. Right off the top of my head, but I'm positive that you could find people from men, women, whatever, and you'd find somebody that would be good. But it's a harder choice. Wheel of Fortune is a lighthearted show, so when Pat Sajak's gone, they can just pop somebody in there. Anybody that can wear a Hawaiian shirt can do that show, right? Let's be honest, it's nothing against him, but this was the show that it just sort of had a very distinct personality for the better part of 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I know we've rambled on about it, but it just goes to show how ingrained Trebek was in, all of our psyches for the last so long, even if it was in the periphery.
Yeah. So obviously, rest in peace, Alex Trebek. Your legacy will forever be etched into many members of many generations. And, well, thank you for everything. Our next story is just a little bit happier. This one comes courtesy of MovieWeb.com. Not only is Hasbro currently working on a movie based upon the hugely popular tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, but it also has now been revealed that the company is also actively developing a live-action television show to go with it. Brian Goldner, the CEO of Hasbro, announced earlier this week that the company very much intends to commit to the franchise, with the company's entertainment arm currently in the early stages of developing a live-action show based around the lore of Dungeons & Dragons. The team is also working on a couple of different approaches because there's so much mythology and canon for Dungeons and Dragons for the live action television, Goldner said on Hasbro's quarterly earnings call. And there's been very strong interest. We've talked about how many global streamers and terrestrial broadcasters have been interested in Dungeons and Dragons. Sadly, no other details are known about the potential small screen project, with Goldner mentioning the development of a television series while discussing the upcoming Dungeons and Dragons feature film, which is currently in.
Is that like Super Dungeons and Dungeons and Dungeons and Dragons?
Exactly. It's that one expansion, which is currently in pre-production and scheduled for release in 2022. From this small yet tantalizing slice of information, it certainly sounds like Hasbro is looking at all aspects of the property with the idea to explore many of the other worlds of Dungeons. Fuck!
I said it so many times, you're stuck in a loop, motherfucker.
I broke. Jesus.
Dungeons and Dungeons and Dungeons.
So many dungeons.
I'm sorry, you sound like Trump's spiritual advisor speaking in tongues the other day.
I broke. The long gestating Dungeons and Dragons movie finally made some headway earlier this year, bringing in game night directors Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, with the duo attached to write and direct the project. Though not much is known about the highly anticipated Dungeons and Dragons movie, Goldstein and Daly have offered some insight as to how far along in the process they are, as well as teasing the movie's tone. We want it to be fun, Goldstein said back in May. It's not an out-and-out comedy, but it is action fantasy movie with a lot of comedic elements and characters we hope people will really get into and enjoy watching their adventures. D&D is such a unique look at the fantasy genre where its contemporary terms of the people playing it and the way they speak to each other, John Francis Daly added, before revealing their approach to the material. So we never wanted to spoof the genre of fantasy or take the piss out of it, but we wanted to find another way into it that wasn't necessarily seen before. Just the format of Dungeons and Dragons is so interesting and fun because it's all about critical thinking and thinking on your feet and figuring out ways to make things work after they fall flat. There's a lot of spirit of that, and we're trying to interject that into the movie itself. For those who have perhaps been living under a rock, Dungeons and Dragons is one of the most recognizable names in fantasy role-playing, and originally designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. It was first published back in 1974 and has since become one of the most best-known and best-selling role-playing games in the world. With people forced to stay indoors lately, the brand has seen a 20% increase in sales compared to last year, with many turning to their beloved fantasy game as an escape from the crushing bleakness that is 2020. And then it just kind of goes on like this. I think a live-action TV show is a good idea. I'm a little leery about the movie with them adding comedy. I mean, I'm okay with a little ha-ha.
You just wait. The TV show, they'll announce Marlon Wayans.
I wouldn't mind a cameo, actually, from Marlon Wayans.
You just wait till Bad Robot and all of the fucking flunkies that have ever worked for Ortsy Kurtzman show up and do it.
I don't know. Like, the thing with D&D, part of it is where you set it. Do you set it in Faerun, which is the Forgotten Realms? Do you set it in something like Ravenloft? Do you set it in something really apocalyptic like Dark Sun? They're not going to. Or you do something like, say, Greyhawk. I think they're going to stick with Forgotten Realms because it's the default setting for D&D 5th edition. but it's also the most recognizable with, I think his name was Ed Greenwood. We saw him at GenreCon a couple years ago.
Yeah, and he was going to be at the local thing, or he was at the
Kitchener Comic-Con or something.
Yeah, one of those, and I think he was going to come back, and then it, all got pushed back and canceled. I still have my press pass for when I was going to be going.
Yeah,
and I contacted them, and I believe it's going to be back on for next year. So, yay! I guess I won't have to send any emails out.
But yeah, I mean, I don't want a redux of Game of Thrones. I don't want that. Yeah. I want something serious fantasy. A little bit of lightheartedness is fine. I want high adventure. Okay, this is going to sound weird. I'd love to find a mix. Follow me through here. Between Hercules and Game of Thrones.
Oh, you want Sam Raimi's Legend of the Seeker that ran for 2 seasons on ABC syndicated.
Yeah, I want something funny, but with high adventure. And
did you ever see that show?
I think I've seen a trailer for it, and that's it.
It's the last action show that was fully syndicated before ABC pulled funding for that. Like the Xena thing where it would appear on whatever channel wanted it. Mm-hmm. Ran for 2 seasons. And it was basically Xena mixed with that. Ted Raimi's obviously in it. And it was really good. Really, really good. And then they're like, we don't do syndicated TV anymore. Everything's streaming. Blah! And then they canceled that shit in like 2007 or 8.
Like, I want there to be... Don't just throw iconic monsters in it to make it D&D, because the thing about D&D, and this has always been my problem playing the game, is setting the world of D&D is all about what do you make it, what sets it apart from Lord of the Rings, because every fantasy thing has elves, dwarves, gnomes, and all that shit. I want a beholder in every episode? No. Do I want Count Strahd von Zarevich? No. Do I want
I want a fucking gelatinous cube. I want to see that shit on screen.
Yeah, like give me iconic monsters, but don't throw them at me every 10 minutes.
You know what? If it ends up being produced by the hacks that we talk about that do Star Trek and all that, what you're going to see is you're going to watch a show, and then your face is going to get all distorted, like when you recently watched the Transformers movie that I heard you finally watched.
Oh my God, that was atrocious.
Yeah. So think about those people making that movie, and they'll make that TV show, and they'll cast the Lady of Pain in the first episode as a monster of the week that anybody can kill, and it'll be played by Roseanne Barr. And you'll watch it, and then we'll just see in the news that you were taken to the hospital because you grabbed a butter knife and stuck it straight through your neck. Like, no more, Don. We broke Birdman. Birdman's gone. He's just like, all we heard was a high-pitched shrill like scream at the top of your lungs. You lost your voice, and then your wife walks in, and oh my God, what's wrong?
I'm catatonic.
And you're just going, and you're pointing like in the friggin' Body Snatchers and just screaming, just and while Roseanne's on the screen with long fingernails, and she's like, I'm the Lady of Pain.
My God. Like, I don't know. Like, I want something interesting, and I don't want, you can include main characters from the world of Faerun, but do not do Drizzt Do'Urden. And I say that because of this. Dritz's story has been told in book, it's been told in audiobook, it's been told in comic book, and I think that would be a character that would be very difficult to bring to life. Plus, when you start bringing things like dark elves and drow into it, you're overloading people with lore.
If you want to do the show right, they should look at other media that's done D&D right. The closest thing would be, funny enough, and I think you were planning to watch it the coming winter, the Goblin Slayer show. The anime, the show, when you see the first introduction, it talks about how there's all these different gods. And of course, it's adapted in that it's not a direct D&D, but when you want to talk about it being heavily influenced, there's all these gods, and they talk about how they created the world and how they play with mortals' lives like it's a game, and how they describe that is literally showing like from like this astral realm, the gods rolling dice for fate and for chance to see what happens, and then it slowly goes into the lives of the people involved, so that you dissolve into it under the understanding that yes, there are gods, and yes, they're fucking with you, and that it's like if you go to cast a spell, it's like I can only cast the spell 2 times per day or whatever, and when they're asked why, it's like, oh, when your class is this, you've only this experienced, it's too hard on your soul or your energy and all this sort of stuff. And the reality behind that is the reason that is an arbitrary number like that is the people in the world don't realize the gods have created the world that way. So you can do things to make you believe where it's not the same as like every fantasy movie tries to make it where like people can cast spells willy-nilly. People can just do whatever. They can just slash everything. Everything has to be Conan the Barbarian, the movie, or Lord of the Rings. You know what? You can make a show representative of the laws that are involved within the game, the laws or rules. And you can do that in such a way that when you introduce it, people will understand it and it can have a unique flavor. Don't just make it generic run-of-the-mill, high fantasy bullshit. Make it have, its own fundamental rules.
Yeah, like I want something that feels authentic to D&D. I want someone who knows, not someone who's so beholden to the lore they won't change what they needed to adapt it, but I want people to consult upon it who love the game, and I want people who've played the game for many years to be involved. Like, ultimately, I would love to see Joe Manganiello involved in some capacity. Hell, he would guest star in a heartbeat.
Yeah, Vin Diesel. He would just play his wizard that he's been playing forever.
And honestly, he would offer himself up cheap, guaranteed. He'd be like, dude, do you want to be in the D&D TV show? We can't pay you a lot.
He would be like, I want to see the script. He was somebody who was offended by the movie that came out.
I think him and Wesley Snipes would probably do something.
Dude, his movie, The Last Witch Hunter, was basically his way of saying, can I make a D&D movie? And, people are like, it's just a vanity piece for him, and it wasn't great. As a D&D fan watching it, it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be, super logical, Lord of the Rings. It's supposed to be fun fantasy D&D style adventures with random lore. So he basically did that.
Yeah.
And then to promote the show, he played a D&D game where he was playing that character.
Yeah.
Like for TV.
Like I'd be very curious because I've always heard the rumor around Hollywood there are several celebrity D&D games happening. And I'm very curious to know who's in those. So maybe someday we'll find out. So I guess
we know Joe and has played with Diesel.
Yeah. So
they're a shoo-in.
Hopefully we'll see something cool. So moving on to my next story. This one made me tremendously happy. This past weekend was N7 Day. If you're a fan of the Mass Effect franchise, that stands for a military organization within the Alliance military, which is basically what Commander Shepard is. He's a super special ops soldier. He's pretty awesome. So according to the BioWare blog, written by Casey Hudson, who I interviewed back in 2009. It's tough keeping a big secret, and we've really struggled to keep this one a surprise, but now it's official. Today, we announced the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. We've heard for years your request for a Mass Effect remaster, so we're super happy to finally reveal that we've been working on a remastered edition of the Mass Effect trilogy. For many months now, our team at BioWare has been hard at work updating the textures, shaders, models, effects, and the technical features of 3 enormous games. Our goal was not only to remake or reimagine the original games, but to modernize the experience so that fans and new players can experience the original work in its best possible form. It's been amazing to see the adventures of Commander Shepard take on new life in super sharp resolution, faster frame rates, and beautiful visual enhancements. As game developers, we always hope that our games will transcend their original platforms. Having the opportunity to remaster the trilogy means the fruits of a decade of our work will live on, and we'll be experienced better and clearer than ever before. Mass Effect Legendary Edition will include the single-player base content and DLC from Mass Effect 2, and Mass Effect 3, plus all the promo weapons, armors, and packs, all remastered and optimized.
Mass Effect 2, Black Hole Gun, win the game.
Mass Effect, I think it was 2, the Cerberus Harrier rifle. Goodbye.
Okay, dude. no multiplayer stuff. How are you going to? No? I hated the multiplayer.
Oh, I loved it.
The third game had horrible implementation of it, tacked on to force you to play it so that you could get your readiness level up. They must have a different method of getting your readiness level up.
Well, no, you could get your galactic readiness up,
but the fastest way was doing
multiplayer. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I hated it because it wasn't programmed very well, and that was one thing they admitted at the time in all the media, was that it was not well implemented, and it felt tacked on, and it felt very
well.
It
was developed as a side project. The Mass Effect multiplayer was supposed to be its own game, but then they're like, "Well, we have all this source code. What are we going to do with it?" And then that's how it became part of Mass Effect 3.
Well, and you got to remember how different the company was over the course of the development of all their stuff. Because Mass Effect 1 was basically developed, wasn't it developed or in development before they were bought out?
Yes.
And that was because that was a Microsoft Studios released it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one, I believe that was the first game they were developing fully with EA on board, so they still had their creative freedom. And then by the third game, EA's like, you must have multiplayer. It's like, why? We sell well as a single-player game. Why would we do something we're not good at? And we get Anthem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is fucking bullshit. So I'm glad that they're not doing multiplayer at all.
I'm sad because I had a squad of about 10 people. I would play that on a fairly regular basis on Sundays, and I had so much fun. I
guarantee you nobody would be playing it now.
I don't know.
That gameplay style does not hold up.
I don't know, because I think even Andromeda's gameplay, its multiplayer, it didn't it didn't sell a lot of its N7 packs, but a lot of people played it.
I think they want to avoid multiplayer because of how bad their last two games performed.
I could believe that. I very well could.
It's also less netcode they have to worry about, right?
Yes.
Maintaining stuff. Make this product, release any game-breaking, fixed patches, and that's it, and focus on. And did you read in the article they're teasing Mass Effect 5 or 4?
Yes. So
5? I think they've abandoned what's happened with Andromeda.
Yes.
And what we're going to see is a bridge between the two versions. So we will see what they will include. It's probably Tally's ship. They'll include how the tease at the end of the last game that we were so pissed we didn't get, which was meeting Tally's ship. What we're going to see is what happened to her, and it's going to merge the two storylines together.
Yeah,
and we'll get the alien. We'll probably get the alien threat that they introduced in Andromeda, but what we'll probably get is all of the characters that we liked from the first three.
Like, if I had to guess, it's either going to be what you're suggesting, a bridge between the original trilogy and Andromeda, but it's going to. I don't know when it's going to take place, because I know what you're talking about. The Quarian DLC was released as a novel.
Oh, that's right.
And it is canon to that world. But then again, anything can be rewritten at the whim of EA and BioWare.
Well, I know that Casey's back as the head honcho, right?
Yeah. So I would imagine him, and I think his name is Mac Walters. I don't know. Would probably have something to say. So according to this, the article does go on saying this will be available all remastered, optimized for 4K Ultra HD. It will be available in spring 2021 for Xbox One, PS4, PC with forward compatibility and targeted enhancements for Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. More information will be coming.
So what that sounds like is COVID pushed things back, obviously.
Yes.
I think they were ready. They would have been ready to launch the current gen stuff on N7 day.
There was talk earlier in the summer. I think it was I know the journalist's name is Jeff Grubb, and I can't remember what outlet he's from. But
there's a few I think he writes for.
But yeah, he leaked a bunch of stuff earlier this summer, and there was talk that it was going to be released in October, which obviously just passed, and it was certified by the Korean ratings board in September.
Yeah.
But obviously COVID, like you said, pushed things back. And the problem they were having, the rumor mill is that Mass Effect 1 was the one they were having the most trouble with. And it was combat.
Do you want to know why? If you remember why they would have had trouble with that? they would have to develop an entirely new version for Xbox because they were going to be basing the remasters on the trilogy that came out on PlayStation. And if you remember correctly, the PlayStation trilogy used the engine for Mass Effect 3 for Mass Effect 1 because they never originally had Mass Effect. It was a Microsoft exclusive. So their choices would be remaster an old version of the game. They'd have to remaster 2 versions of Mass Effect 1. And it wouldn't, that would be so time consuming. So their choice is probably now they're going with the best version that was available, or are they going with taking the PC versions and making completely new ports? I think that might be what they're doing, because you go from the x86 PC version, already had high resolution stuff built in, build your new assets for there, then build down to the other consoles. And from the sounds of it, they're not going to have next-gen versions available on launch day. It sounds like you will probably have to wait till the summer till they do like smart updates and all that sort of stuff. Because if you read the article, the SKUs that they're talking about are only for current gen.
Yes. Now, there was rumored a Switch port, but there is no mention of that anymore.
The Switch wouldn't be able to run the first game, which was heavy on the CPU usage. It could run Mass Effect 2 probably, though.
I was about to say, yeah. I mean, it could run Mass Effect 2 and 3 probably.
Yeah, because one was highly unoptimized, and they admitted that. That's why they had to, they started, instead of porting that over the PlayStation, it was actually easier for them to use the engine they had already built for the third game. So it was funny. You remember going back, because I've played the first one. I played a little bit on the Xbox when I borrowed it from a friend when I first, was playing 360. I bought a 360 to play Mass Effect 2 day one. So I was playing, cold without having any prior knowledge of the game series. And they were banking on that because they sold so many copies of Mass Effect 2, and that whole intro where you basically start from scratch, that was because they knew they were going to get a whole lot of new players.
Yeah, when I did my initial playthrough, I had Mass Effect 1, but I didn't play it. Mass Effect 2 was the one that got me into the series.
Yeah, I think it was for a lot of people. And then I beat it. I beat Mass Effect 2 and 3, or I beat 2 on 360. I beat 1 by going back and replaying it I played it on PC to beat it because I had a decent enough PC at the time, and oh boy, would it chug along if you had like motion blur and film grain on. I had to turn that crap off. And then I played 1, 2, and 3 in the trilogy, because I forget, did the trilogy come out day one, or was it? No, I played 3 on the 360 because I wanted to carry forward data. Mm-hmm. Then I bought the trilogy on PS3 and played all 3. And what was odd about it was playing the first game with that remastered style and then seeing a downgrade by going into the second game.
Yeah, I've never played I haven't played the trilogy on PS3, but I have played Mass Effect 2 and 3 on PS3.
It's actually worth a fair bit of money because they never released the first game separately.
Yeah.
So this is going to be fun. Like if anybody's listening, hey Mike, are we pre-ordering this?
Yeah, day one.
Are we going to ask for a copy? No, this is something we own and we want the physical copy of, and I will bet you that there's going to be a collector's edition.
I would hope so. I mean, I'll be very curious to see if they do something, but the second pre-orders go live, you have my money. In fact, I actually watched.
Do you go Xbox or do you go PS5?
Xbox.
I think Xbox. Not because fanboyism, but it is it's a multi-platform system. Sure, the PlayStation will technically probably load faster, even though we've seen some mixing results. It'll probably load faster, but I get the feeling that if they're putting on all these ray tracing things, it's going to be a resource hog. So the Xbox is probably the best bet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I really think it's going to be something fantastic. So we'll find out more next year.
I just thought about something. Storage. With these textures, this game is going to be like 350 gigs.
It's going to be huge.
Hey, those with an S.
Good luck.
Here's your Mass Effect delivery system.
Pretty fucking much. All right, moving on to our next story. This one comes courtesy of IGN.com. GameStop cancels employee contest for extra Black Friday work hours. Other prizes include a Visa gift card and an Amazon Echo 8. GameStop has reportedly canceled a company-wide contest that asked employees to perform a synchronized TikTok dance in exchange for prizes like extra work hours on Black Friday.
Hey, everybody gather around so you can all dance so that I can book more hours for you so I don't have to work as the manager as long.
It's so dumb. So originally reported on The Gamer, news broke on November 3rd that GameStop had announced a TikTok competition across its stores that tasked employees with performing a synchronized dance with their coworkers in exchange for a prize. The prize included an Amazon Echo 8, an Amazon Echo Auto, a $100 Visa gift card, and 10 extra work hours on Black Fridays. The winner of the challenge will receive an Echo 8, Echo Auto, a $100 Visa gift card, and 10 additional labor hours to use during Black Friday week. The competition's announcement post from GameStop reads, according to The Gamer, imagine what you could do with all those prizes. Yes, imagine what you could do with all those prizes, like work 10 extra hours during one of the most stressful weeks in customer service and retail, all while a global pandemic is happening.
Yeah, yay. You know what? That really, you can't do more than 8 hours legally, and I don't know, maybe the states are different, but like that really is going to equal 2 people doing a 5-hour shift, or that's going to equal 3 people, 2 doing a 3-hour shift, which at least in Canada, the minimum you can have somebody come in for is 3 hours. So like, it's just either going to extend some coverage for some people, or the possibility, what I would see happening is they're going to hire or have 2 of the part-timers that they wouldn't normally be able to have come in and work on Black Friday. But what about pandemic rules where you can only have so many people in the store? So this doesn't make any sense. They're probably already operating in most states under strict rules about maximum people per store, including employees. So these are hours you may not even be able to use legally.
The article also goes on to say the announcement was originally posted on GameStop's conference portal, but has since been removed as discovered by The Gamer, likely due to the backlash the competition received. The GameStop subreddit was quickly filled with dozens of posts about the competition, with one post in particular receiving over 100 comments ranging from EU to a new form of low. While the competition's announcement post has been removed, GameStop hasn't formally announced anything regarding a cancellation. IGN has reached out to GameStop for clarification, but haven't heard back. This isn't the first time GameStop has received backlash for its treatment of employees. Earlier this year, the company said it was an essential business and required employees to work during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is my commentary right now. This was notable during Animal Crossing, New Horizons, and Doom Eternal.
Yes, and we should also mention that while they did that in the States, it didn't do in Canada because we had vastly different definitions of what's essential, and Ontario is much stricter on labor laws.
Yeah, although they did have the EB games in Toronto.
Yeah.
Did open for Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal.
And they also did curbside pickups where what they were doing here was, they were saying pass things through the door. Some of the EB games here were being more creative, and those that had slightly newer systems, like most of them are all wired, but those that might have had wireless terminals for debit cards, some of them were sticking them on a pole. It's like, tap your card, here's your shit.
So yeah, GameStop, just fuck off.
Yeah, that's so tone deaf, and they don't have the money to be throwing things around. But you know what they should have done? You know what would really motivate them? To dance and do crazy shit and dance like a monkey for TikToks to promote the business as if it's a good place to work, which we know it's not. I feel bad for everybody that works there because a lot of them are really good people. But instead of giving 10 hours of work, how about this? The store that wins, each employee gets a vacation day.
Yeah, or give them 10 hours in lieu of, or something.
Yeah, 10 hours in lieu. It's like, oh, you've got 5 employees at your store. Every one of you can have 2 hours off, paid extra. Or Or you know what? How about this? Instead of off, because they're really strapped for coverage. How about this? Everybody there gets a 2-hour bonus. That's like $20 for most of these people.
Yeah.
Everybody here gets an extra $20 added to their paycheck that 1 month. Like, that's such a stupid thing. Your prize is you get to work more.
Whoopie fucking do. Get bent.
You're better off working at McDonald's.
You really
are.
are.
You're better off working anywhere. You're better off working anywhere. A temp agency.
At least at McDonald's, you're further away from the public in some instances.
I mean, and I don't like to use that. Like, I'm not denigrating, or saying anything bad about fast food workers. It's just, one of the things that comes to mind. It's like most other places don't treat their employees like not only do you not deserve to work here, but you should be thankful we're going to give you more hours.
Fuck off. All right, so our next story is interesting, but I think it's a good thing. So according from comingsoon.net, Stranger Things' Sean Levy says filming delay has made season 4 scripts better. As production continues to get back on track for Netflix's Stranger Things, executive producer Sean Levy commented about the effects of the series' previous filming shutdown due to the ongoing pandemic. Speaking with Collider, Levy has revealed although the filming setback has definitely affected the 4th season's release, it did have a positive effect on the quality of the new season scripts. I'll just say that the pandemic definitely massively delayed shooting, and therefore the launch of our current season 4 date still to be TBD. But it's impacted very positively by allowing the Duffer Brothers, for the first time ever, to write the entire season before we shoot it and have time to rewrite in a way they rarely had before. So the quality of these screenplays are exceptional, making maybe better than ever. Season 4 Stranger Things stars, it's just basically a bunch of kind of background information. But yeah, basically, I'm not opposed to this. If they have the entire season written, and they start shooting and they find something doesn't work, they can go back and fix it early enough in the process rather than shooting as they go.
Very true.
I mean, I'm okay with waiting for a quality show.
Do you know what used to do this sort of thing?
What?
Star Trek, 90s shows. What back before everything had to be super fast, you would, because you were shooting a lot of time most of the year, when you had 26 episodes to shoot, that's basically every week.
Yeah, that's pretty rapid.
And you know what you would do before you start? You take a break between seasons for a little bit, but for the mass majority, you always had 5 or 6 scripts ready and to go before production started. So I don't like what this shows is, and Stranger Things is a well written show already as it is. So it's amazing what they can do under the time constraints. But what that shows is how the writing in television in the last 20 years has been an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, give us your scripts. So, hey, script monkeys, get us something we can shoot to shovel down the throats of people.
Yeah, like there aren't a lot of shows that I think really have jumped off the page that have been really exceptionally. I mean, I guess you can make a case for True Detective, Breaking Bad, early Game of Thrones. Now,
premium cable, and high-end streaming.
Yes,
that's been it. Like, as far as regular television, and it's some shows are still decent, but regular television, the writing's always been poor. It's soap opera, basically. It's melodrama. And when it comes to basic cable, it's all been dreck. It's mostly been crap. And even a lot of times on streaming, they're just looking for a quick bang. It's a handful of maybe 10, maybe 15 writers in all of the business that are really good, getting all the awards, and these are people that were writing their scripts half the time on HBO before they start a show. Like, before they do a first season of a show, every episode has been written. And then they'll get the green light to go and shoot it. That's how things used to go for pilots and seasons. So I'm glad to hear that they're getting even more time to write it, because that means that, any little bits that would be, feel off or feel cheesy, it's all going to be, ironed out.
Yeah, like they'll have time to work on it. Like, I think shows, especially in the last year, you look at Lovecraft Country, you look at The Mandalorian, you look at the quality that has been produced out of short form shows. And Stranger Things is definitely of that caliber where it's short, sweet, and to the point. Nothing really feels wasted. There's maybe, I wouldn't call them filler episodes, maybe weaker than others, but nothing truly filler. So if you got the time to do it right, I know season 4, they've talked a lot how there's going to be a lot of X-Men influences with the like Hellfire Club and whatnot. Maybe it'll be cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
So our next story comes courtesy of Kotaku. Capcom has been hit by a cyber attack. Group claims to have stolen 1 terabyte of employee and customer data. On November 2nd, Capcom servers were brought down by unauthorized access carried out by a third party. As Bleeping Computer reports, the group claiming responsibility for the attack say they downloaded around 1 terabyte of data containing everything from employees' visa records to customer bank details for proprietary business information. Capcom, in their own statement, said, at present, there is no indication that any customer information was breached, while adding they are consulting with the police as well as related authorities. So both the breach and attempts to restore their servers. Here's Capcom's statement in full. Beginning in the early morning hours of November 2nd, 2020, some of the Capcom Group's networks experienced issues that affected access to certain systems, including email and file servers. The company has confirmed that this was due to unauthorized access carried out by a third party, and that it has halted some operations of its internal networks as of November 2nd. Capcom has expressed its deepest regret for any inconvenience that this may cause to its various stakeholders. Further, it stated that at present there is no indication that any customer information was breached. This incident has not affected connections for playing the company's games online or access to various websites. Presently, Capcom is consulting with the police as well as other related authorities. While both carrying out an investigation and taking measures to restore its systems, the company will continue to offer relevant updates as they become clear via its websites and other means. Never would have figured someone going after Capcom, of all companies.
Everything was unencrypted on the base. This is the same bullshit that happened with Sony. It only seems to happen with Japanese companies because a lot of them, when they discover they're using tech from like 20 years ago, like they're for all the advancements they have, technologically wise when it comes to manufacturing, a lot of times their security infrastructure is really dated. And I don't know why. Well, and we saw how a lot of this was affected with COVID when it came to work from home. These companies were not set up to have any remote login software. Like remote logging software when it comes to, connecting to servers and work from home stuff, it's been around for like 25 years. But a lot of these companies like Nintendo, they weren't even set up. They didn't even have the ability. Half the people didn't even have webcams. So it's something where it's almost like a wake-up call. Like, you got to invest in your security and your servers. Don't put customer and employee credit cards, passports, banking information on the first level of the hard drive, unencrypted in text files. Like, are you crazy?
Yeah, you're asking for trouble. Literally knocking at trouble's door and say, hey, you know what? We haven't hung out in a while. So, yikes. So, hopefully nothing terrible was taken. And I guess we'll find out as quote-unquote relevant websites are updated. So, this next story is I'm excited about. Slight spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, well, I got to break some news to you. So, according to comicbook.com, Lucasfilm is reportedly aiming at a mid-November shooting start date on a Star Wars miniseries based on Temuera Morrison's Boba Fett, who returned in Season 2's premiere.
Okay, so I haven't watched Episode 2 yet, so you're not spoiling anything from there, right?
No.
Okay.
According to a late Thursday report from the industry trade Deadline, the still rumored Boba Fett spinoff will film next week ahead of a late November or early December production start on the 3rd season of The Mandalorian. Other sources indicated a possible spring 2021 start date on the new season. Details are scarce, and the famously secretive Disney Lucasfilm has not yet confirmed or announced a plan for a Morrison starring Boba Fett series. In The Mandalorian's 2nd season premiere, Chapter 9, The Marshal, written and directed by creator and showrunner Jon Favreau, the armored bounty hunter Din Djarin, Pedro Pascal recovers the battle-damaged armor of Boba Fett salvaged from Mos Pelgo Marshal.
Wait, the Mandalorian has a name?
Yeah.
I literally thought he was just called the Mandalorian.
No, his name is Din Djarin, and they reveal it through, I think, like halfway through the first season.
I must have not paid attention because I just thought he went nameless, like
everyone just calls him Mando,
like old Western comedies or old Western spaghetti Western stuff, like The Man with No Name.
Yeah. The Tatooine set episode ends with Vance handing over the suit of armor so that Jin can return the armor to its ancestral home. As a shadowy figure revealed to be Fett watches on 5 years after surviving his encounter with the man-eating Sarlacc. In 2013, Disney declared plans for a young Han Solo prequel and a separate spin-off starring the feared bounty hunter Boba Fett, who hounded Solo in the original Star Wars trilogy. Attached to direct the untitled Boba Fett movie was Chronicles' Josh Trank, but the troubled filmmaker dropped out. Logan's James Mangold replaced him as the writer-director. By October 2018, shortly after the poor box office performance of Solo: A Star Wars Story, the second feature film project following the billion-plus grossing Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, Deadline reported Disney dropped Fett to focus on the similar-looking Mandalorian, whose series ultimately launched to much fanfare when Disney Plus released in November 2019. Disney similarly scrapped its planned Obi-Wan: A Star Wars Story spin-off movie and folded that film into an upcoming Disney Plus series. Like his co-star Morrison, Star Wars prequel trilogy star Ewan McGregor returns to his role as the exiled Jedi Master after the events of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Earlier this year, then Disney CEO Bob Iger said the priority for Star Wars in the next few years is television. During a February earnings call, Iger said there's more coming from The Mandalorian, including the possibility of infusing it with more characters and the possibility of taking those characters into their own directions in terms of series. And that's where the article ends. Now,
isn't Boba Fett supposed to be like a fake Mandalorian?
Yes, he was given the armor or I guess he made his own. He's not a Mandalorian technically, because Mandalorian isn't a race; it's a creed.
No, yeah, I thought that the whole idea was that Jango and all them they were not like he was like that. The Fets were known as grifters and not actually following it, and they wore the armor to intimidate and weren't actually.
I think, if I'm remembering my Star Wars lore correctly, Jango was an exiled Mandalorian, and he just wore the armor. I don't even think his was Beskar. I think his was Durasteel.
Which would explain why it crumpled.
Well, yeah, like he got his ass kicked. And Boba Fett obviously grew up under, after Jango died, he got trained by... Yeah. He's an unaltered clone, which is why he doesn't age like Captain Rex and Wolf and all those guys. He also trained under Cad Bane, who is allegedly still alive, according to Dave Filoni, the guy that wrote the Clone Wars and Rebels. So there's a possibility of him showing up. There's rumored the Ahsoka Tano series is supposed to happen at some point, because she has been referenced, and we know what's her name? I'm trying to remember it. If you said it, I would.
Rosario Dawson.
Yeah, she's been cast, so she's supposed to play Tano. Tano at this time would be in her late 30s, early 40s. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, because there's rumors that she'll tie in at the end of the season, or close to the end of the season, because the 5th episode is written and directed by Dave Filoni. If any episode's going to have Tano, it'll be that one. And they said this season will be feel very Empire Strikes Back-ish. So there's a good chance when Temuera Morrison shows back up as Boba Fett, he'll have recovered his armor from Mando, and it'll be a standoff between him, Moff Gideon, and the Mandalorian for the fate of Baby Yoda. So it's going to be an interesting season. So far, I really like what I've seen. This is not a spoiler. In the second episode, a Canadian star shows up, and that made me really, really happy.
Okay, that was all over the net, so that's the only spoiler I've seen. It's not really a spoiler. It's just
cool.
For Americans, they're like, who? Why is everybody going nuts? And like, I'm going to assume that this actor is not playing a merchant.
No, it's funny. The actor who shows up as the X-Wing pilot actually shows he's a known Star Wars cosplayer too. Like he's been
he
shown.
really is? Like,
yeah,
he's the star of Kim's Convenience, right?
Yeah, and he's just a giant dork, and he just loves Star Wars.
I don't know if Kim's Convenience is in this. It might be on Netflix in the States or something. But yeah, like it's a CBC show. It's a sitcom. It's been on for a few years now.
Yeah, so I think the pilot's name is Appa. I think. I don't know.
All I saw was a picture, and it looked like they whitened his beard up a little more than it really is.
Yeah, so that's a pretty cool little Easter egg if you're a Canadian nerd for you. Episode 3 of The Mandalorian will air this week on Disney Plus on Friday. Me and my wife watch it every Friday afternoon, so it's always a fun time. So anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of the...
Speaking of weird Canadian guest stars, you probably saw I lost my mind at the end of the last Star Trek Discovery, where the next episode of Star Trek Discovery is going to have Oded Fehr, who you probably know from the Mummy movies. He was their I guess guide that was helping them stop the mummy. Mm-hmm. And he was also in, you know him probably, didn't he play Carlos in Resident Evil movies?
Yeah.
And then David fucking Cronenberg is going to be in Star Trek now.
Yeah, that's such a weird thing for him to do.
Most famous Canadian director of all time. Only traditionally did body horror and then later on crime dramas. Notably reclusive the last 10 years or so. Randomly played a doctor or was it a professor in Jason X?
Yeah, and then gets skewered by a pole.
And I think his only like other starring role wasn't it Near Dark or something he was in? Or was it Nightbreed? No, Nightbreed. That's what it was. So I mean, like he's a Canadian director who's like really well renowned. It's like, and for one little second, they're like, on the next episode of Star Trek Discovery, I'm like, I watched it, and paused it, and went, the fuck. So we're getting some weird casting. COVID's made it where they're like, hey, who lives in Toronto that can show up? And wasn't part of Mandalorian shot here then?
I wouldn't think so, but.
Because I know Star Trek's all filmed in Toronto, so I wonder if Star Wars. There's a lot of really good looking sets they use in like real scenery. Mm-hmm. So who knows where things are filmed nowadays? But yeah, just thought it was funny. Weird Toronto stuff's going on.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we should be doing a future Imperfect talking about Star Trek. I think in the next couple days. I think we're supposed to record today or tomorrow as of this recording. So. Either way, we're going to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 3, and yeah. Anyway,
indeed.
Indeed. So coming up next here on the show, you're going to hear Alex's review of a re-release of a Nintendo classic. This is Pikmin 3 on the Nintendo Switch.
Our friends over at Nintendo sent a copy of Pikmin 3 Deluxe to check out on the Nintendo Switch. This is the enhanced remake of the Wii U game that was released, I believe it was 7 years ago now. Time flies. Wow. And hopefully this rejuvenates interest in the general populace for another title. Maybe we'll get a Pikmin 4 eventually. And I know that a lot of fans have been clamoring to get this as well as some other titles over from the Wii U to the more accessible and more widely adopted Switch. And this is not going to be a review of the game. We all know it's a Nintendo cult classic, the whole franchise, and it performs quite well. It's their version of an RTS, only you're controlling everything sort of down at the ground level. And with this title, it's something that was really attuned initially for use with the Wii U. The map was on the Wii U gamepad, and you know, the question arose, how is that going to adapt and transfer over onto the Switch where you don't have that? You don't have pointer precision controls on the map or movement or anything. And I gotta say, it works quite well. They've added a mini map that can be toggled on and off on the main screen so that you can see where everything is. Sort of intuitive. They've tried to find a way to make it so that as if it was designed initially for the Switch, even though it wasn't. Graphics-wise, to my eye, it looks basically identical, which is not bad. It's a cartoony style. Audio-wise, it's more of the same. They've added a prologue and an epilogue to the game, which is just, a little bit of a dash of extra to it. They've also added a difficulty setting that's ultra spicy, which I like that. If you're going to call instead of saying nightmare or insanity level or something, ultra spicy is a good way to go. So you're in control of 3 different characters that are there to try to get as much food as possible back to their ship, so that they can basically feed their ailing race. And along the way, you're trying to fight monsters, solve puzzles, and just direct everything to go as smoothly as possible before you run out of resources. Simple premise, executed quite well, and I feel that there could have been a little more added to this game. Maybe, I don't know what they could have done. I guess if you had changed much more than what they did, it would have been, I guess, constituting an entirely new game. So maybe they are working on a Pikmin 4. But as it is, this was one of those games that had been sorely missed from the catalog of Wii U titles that finally comes over, and just in time for the holidays. So I think if you're looking for, something for the Nintendo, because right now we know next gen is coming this coming week with the other companies. You've got your PlayStation and your Xbox coming. But for those of us that either have a Nintendo as an extra console, or maybe Nintendo is your only console, or maybe you're not interested in the others, you're looking for what can we get for Christmas. And that the Mario 3D All-Stars is going to be a hot seller for people that don't already have it. This looks to be, their Black Friday / holiday release. This is going to be released in tandem, a little later with Hyrule Warriors here. So, it's good that we've got a new game coming from Nintendo, and then we've got, a beloved indie, sort of, not indie, like classic niche title coming out right now, which is the Pikmin 3 Deluxe. And I think that it's going to satisfy a lot of people. It's something that the whole family can play, and you might want to check it out, digitally, physically, whatever you want, as far as a gift for the kids of the family. It's something to keep an eye out for.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
All right, well, welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm still Mike the Birdman. He's still action producer. All right, well, it's 2020. Fucked up things happen.
Let's get weird, man.
Let's get weird. This is the weird news. All right, this story comes courtesy of the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, or CBC.ca. A letter has been delivered to Godridge, Ontario's newsroom 86 years late. Sorry for the late post delivery, reads a sticky note attached to the envelope. Staff at the Godridge Signal Star in Huron County, Ontario, knew they had a mystery on their hands when a letter arrived in their office mail slot. The postmark is dated May 26, 1934. The postage stamp cost 3 cents. A sticky note attached to the envelope reads, "Sorry for the late postal delivery." We honestly don't know.
I love the law and how it states, like, nowadays you'd be like, that's not enough postage. You need like $1.20 now or something for local. But it all depends on when it was post stamped at the office, right? So even though they paid 3 cents and it was that long ago, they legally have to deliver it if they can find it.
Yeah. So, according to Kathleen Smith, who is the editor of the newspaper, we honestly don't know where it got lost in time. Inside, she found a handwritten letter penned by Miss Margaret Elliott inquiring about a salesgirl position advertised in the Signal, the newspaper that operated in town until 1937. Her experience included the Metropolitan Store in London and working the Christmas rush at the People Store in Godridge. "I was immediately intrigued," said Smith, who added the envelope was sealed when it arrived. She contacted the Huron County Museum to inquire about Miss Elliott, who, according to the letter, had 2 years of high school training in 1934 and listed the local high school principal as a reference. "I'm holding on to this young girl's letter. Did she get married? Did she have kids? Did she get the job?" Of course, Smith also wondered how it arrived at their office 86 years late. Anyone can drop a letter in their mail slot, so staff wondered if someone found a long-lost letter and left it there. Canada Post says it's a unique story that it did not deliver the letter. A spokesperson for Canada Post told CBC the mail carrier on the route did not deliver the letter or write the note. It is unlikely a piece of mail could get trapped in their system since staff do regular searches of the equipment, says Valerie Chartrand in a written statement. She added that any mail delayed in this manner would be accompanied by a customer service letter from Canada Post. So sorry we can't provide any insight, but it certainly is a unique story. I would not be shocked by any answer, says Smith. Smith hasn't ruled out any possibility. Everything about it seemed old. The writing style, the words used, the ink, said Smith, who wonders if a hiring manager took it home in a stack of papers and discovered it decades later. We don't have any leads. My grandfather had it in a sock drawer or whatever, she says. The newspaper's advertising department is currently looking to fill a sales job. Ms. Smith thinks it's unlikely the letter was written and dropped off as a prank. I honestly don't think why anyone would do that, she said. There's also a handwritten post-it apologizing for the late delivery. Whoever wrote that note, I read it as humorous, said Smith. It's not just a week late, it's almost a century late. I would not be shocked by any answer right now about how this year has gone. I'd be very curious if the records from the Huron County Museum could actually locate this woman.
Well, we've heard, there's freedom of information stuff that you can file, like public records. All they have to, once the libraries all start opening again, you could go to the local library and, something that I think the younger generation, younger than us, probably doesn't remember existed. You can look up all this town records and all this sort of stuff on microfiche.
Yeah, so maybe we can find this woman.
Yeah, a lot of that hasn't been digitized, and you can go to the public clerk's office and pull that shit up, and it looks like a giant overhead, which, again, kids don't know what an overhead is. But, basically a giant magnifying glass, and you put this little microfiche, it's like little ticker tapes that are tiny, and it'll blow up, and it's like reading a newspaper from, however long ago. And the libraries and city councils across the whole country have documented that crap for like 100 years or more. So there'll be something. As long as she lived in that town for an extended period of time, there'll be some information.
Yeah, so unlikely that this woman is still alive, but who knows?
Here's the thing, 2 years of high school, right?
So maybe she might have been...
She could have been 15.
Yeah, 15 or 14 or something
so
like that.
14, you start high school. So she could have been 15, maybe... So let's say 16 on the outset. In 19, was it 34?
Yeah.
She could be alive. She'd be in her 90s.
Who knows? So if you're out there...
Late 90s, but she could still be around.
Our next story comes courtesy of the BBC and is a little significantly darker. So Vladimir Mugarev, murder, Russian sausage king killed in sauna with a crossbow.
The Russian sausage king.
So
you want bratwurst? You want Russian sausage? You want kielbasa? You come to Sausage King. I get you best deal.
This sounds like something out of like a Steven Seagal movie. So according to this, a Russian oligarch named the Sausage King has been murdered with a crossbow, investigators say. Vladimir Mugarov and his partner were in an outdoor sauna cabin when they were attacked reportedly by two masked assailants. The woman managed to escape through a window and called the police. Detectives found the body of Mr. Mugarov, who owns some of Russia's largest meat processing plants, in the sauna with a crossbow next to it. Police have detained a male suspect in connection with the murder. The suspect has not been named. The attack happened at this guy's countryside estate about 40 kilometers outside of the capital, Moscow, on Monday morning. Russia's investigative committee, similar to the FBI in the U.S., reported it did not name the man, but local media has identified Mr. Mugarov, the owner of, I can't pronounce this, the Orkoski and Meat Empire sausage factories. The intruders demanded cash from Mr. Mugarov before fleeing in a car, the investigative committee said. The getaway car...
Sorry, you want money from the... I'm the king! You get fuck all! And then he, bang, gets hit with a crossbow. Do you know who the fuck I am? Boom, and he's dead with a crossbow.
So the getaway car was later recovered on the outskirts of the town Istra outside of Moscow. Mr. Mugarov's son, Alexander, died in a motorcycle accident in Moscow last year. Just the idea of two guys with ski masks kicking in the door while you're sitting presumably half naked and catching a crossbow bolt between the eyes.
You know what? That's kind of like
Russia.
David Cronenberg's History of Violence, where there's the sauna fight where they're all naked and you see Viggo Mortensen's balls. Or the starting scene of, did you ever see the Arnold movie Red Heat?
Yeah.
It starts out with a giant bathhouse fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
like that.
Or maybe like, I think John Wick has one too.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny. Russian culture and Japanese culture with the bathhouses. It's kind of interesting how that's sort of the crossover. It's like a lot of business gets done in those places.
Yeah. So this next story comes courtesy of Rolling Stone, and this will be our last political story of this week, hopefully for a while, but I doubt it. So according to Rolling Stone, Kanye West's first stab at the presidency ended with him reportedly accumulating 60,000 votes in the 12 states in which he appeared on the ballot. The rapper appeared to concede his long shot bid graciously on Twitter Tuesday night, posting a photo of himself in front of the map of the United States behind him with the caption Kanye 2024. As Vulture notes, he previously tweeted but then deleted the objectively funnier statement, "Welp." Despite the loss, West himself had considered personally fulfilling election day. On Twitter, he documented his visit to the polls in Park County, Wyoming, where he had to write his name in, as he hadn't been able to get himself on the ballot in his current home state. Alongside a video of him feeding his ballot into a machine, West wrote, "This is the first vote of my life. We are here to serve. We pray for every servant leader in the world."
Wait, he never voted before?
According to this,
unless he meant first vote for me in my life.
Maybe, yeah. According to the Park County elections office, write-in candidates such as West received 115 votes, which comprised 0.69% of the county's total votes as of publication. It is unclear how many of those 115 votes, though, were for West or other write-ins. West's presidential bid was, of course, a long shot, in the majority of states where he was able to get his name on the ballot were already leaning solidly Democrat or Republican. This was despite an effort of a group of GOP affiliated lawyers who spent early September scrambling to get West's name on the ballot in swing states like Wisconsin, and ostensibly thinking they could siphon votes away from Democrat Joe Biden, even though West's platform was deeply religious, that would likely resonate with some of the more conservative Christian voters. While most of those efforts failed, the two quasi-swing states where West did appear on the ballot were Minnesota and Iowa. In the former, he picked up about 7,811, and in the later, he garnered about 3,202. Both have been called for Biden, respectively. West's biggest vote tally came in the solidly red state of Tennessee, where he racked up 10,258 votes. In Colorado, he garnered 6,296. Kentucky, 6,312. In Oklahoma, 5,590. Louisiana, 4,894. In Arkansas, just a little over 4,000. Utah, 4,300. Vermont, 1,200 something. And in Idaho, just a little over 3,500. And there are some votes still being counted as of publishing. West first announced his plans to run for president literally a century ago during 2015 during a speech at that MTV Video Music Awards. Over the next 5 years, West technically did become engaged in politics, expressing his support for Donald Trump after the 2016 election, and then spending much of 2018 vouching for the president and even visiting him in the Oval Office. While West appeared to have distanced himself from Trump earlier this year, his decision to go ahead with his long shot bid and accept support from the GOP operatives raised eyebrows over the extent to which the rapper and the president were still tied. As for his actual self-funded campaign, West held one rally in South Carolina in July where he noticeably broke down in tears while discussing abortion. The run, however, always seemed to be another item on West's plate as he busied himself with other endeavors, including even a little bit of new music. Among his more notable campaign activities were launching a website with a 10-point plan for his presidency and lots of merch. The cheapest item is a $40 hat, which you can still buy. He also dropped a handful of campaign ads and took out a 2 full-page advertisement in the New York Times where he detailed his vision for the future. West even managed to earn one major endorsement for his campaign. Rob Reinhart, the creator and co-founder of Soylent, a drinkable meal he concocted because food was a large burden, which he named after the center.
I'm sorry, but it's like, isn't that the perfect sponsor?
Soylent Green.
One crazy person sponsoring another crazy person, and I don't mean to make fun of him, but he's not mentally well. Nobody should have let him run.
Yeah, this just seems like a waste of money and everybody's time. I mean, obviously,
it's a waste of votes.
It is. I mean, obviously, he should be allowed to run if he feels he can make a difference.
Well, here's a question: if you're running for president, shouldn't there be a law that you must have a physical and mental test done to see that you're physically fit before you get elected?
I think there is something about that, but also don't forget, in America, there's a guy on the ballot named Vermin Supreme. So let's not forget that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we have the Rhinoceros Party and a bunch of other stuff. So I mean, I get it, but like, it's such a farce that he could even think he could win. Like, and we say that about Trump in the past, but like, Kanye is not a well man.
I mean, and even that number, 60,000 votes, that was a number that would swing a state. That's not an insignificant number.
That's what I'm saying. If he got like 100 votes or a couple thousand, but like there are people that legitimately thought, even if they've made now it's possible all across the states, these people were like, it's funny to vote for him. But there's a lot of people that would have voted thinking he would have made a good president. This is a man that can't manage his own life.
And I know, obviously, he's had a very public meltdown, and there's been public concerns over his health.
And his wife has even publicly said that, there's only so much she can do. You can't force him to take medication. He's got bipolar or something, and he's not. He does not handle things well when things don't go his way.
Yeah, so obviously, hopefully, Mr. West gets the help he needs.
Yeah. Like, and I'm not trying to talk down on him. It's just I felt like this isn't going to be good for his own health.
Yeah, this wasn't maybe the best use of his time given the circumstances. So, Kanye 2024, I guess we'll wait and see.
Sure. And again, who knows? In 4 years, there's
a lot can happen.
He could get well, be well adjusted. He is a charismatic person. There's a possibility he could run, but don't run for president. Run for local office first and see if you like, run for your city council.
Yeah, do something for the community in which you live, and I think that's where things start.
And then see if you think you can handle more, and if this is the right fit for you. He may find that once he does that this is like his calling. That for a second phase of his life, this is what he wants to do: is be a public servant.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Hopefully. Moving on to our next story. This one's going to go a little bit, and I hate to use this phrase, I think it's funny, out of this world. So according to space.com, this bizarre planet could have supersonic winds in an atmosphere of vaporized rock, a lava ocean, an atmosphere of vaporized rock, supersonic winds, and rock glaciers too. Scientists think they have identified a lava world so dramatic that it might boast a thin regional atmosphere of vaporized rock where it is closest to its star. That exoplanet is K2 141b and was originally discovered in 2017. The world is half again as big as Earth, but orbits so close to its star, which is one smaller than our own, that it completes several loops each Earth day with the same surface permanently facing the side. Just side note, that is known as tidally locked. Now, scientists predict, though, those factors means 2/3 of the surface of K2 141b is permanently sunlit, so much so that not only part of the world is covered in a lava ocean, but some of that rock may even evaporate away into the atmosphere. All rocky planets, including Earth, started off as molten worlds, but then rapidly cooled and solidified. Nicholas Cowan, a planetary scientist at McGill University in Canada and co-author on the new paper, said in a statement, "Lava planets give us a rare glimpse at this stage in planetary evolution. The scientists behind the new research wanted to understand what sort of atmosphere such a hot world might have and how terrestrial tools would see it. K2 141b was a tempting target because it's been studied by both the K2 mission of NASA's Kepler Space Telescope and the agency's Spitzer Space Telescope. And the atmosphere is particularly intriguing because scientists believe that NASA's upcoming James Webb Science Telescope, due to launch late next year, will be able to analyze the components of the distant planetary atmosphere. The researchers started with what previous studies have determined about K2 141b so far. For example, the planet's density is about that of Earth, so that the crust can be modeled as pure silica as a reasonably simplified representation. Then scientists figured out that the surface might look like. That work took into account complications like the fact the planet is so close to its star that more than half of the world's surface might be sunlit, perhaps as much as 2/3, the researchers calculated. Such constant light and heat might mean the world likely sports a magma ocean tens of miles or kilometers deep, according to the team's calculation. Then the researchers modeled what an atmosphere here would look like based on 3 potential main ingredients, all of which are common in the crusts of rocky planets. All 3 cases can support an atmosphere, the scientists calculated, with wind speeds above 1.1 miles or 1.7 kilometers per second, far faster than the speed of sound here on Earth. At the edges of the atmosphere where temperatures can drop, the gaseous rock would be cool enough to fall back to the surface as precipitation. The researchers calculated if the atmosphere is dominated by silica or silicon monoxide, that precipitation would most likely fall into the magma ocean. But if the atmosphere is predominantly sodium, that rock would look even weirder, with all solid sodium oozing back towards the oceans like glaciers here on Earth, the researchers wrote. But all this modeling wasn't just to envision what truly a bizarre world might look like. This is science, after all. The researchers wanted to compare their models with the current and predictive observing capacities of the massive space telescopes. Here, the scientists are upbeat. They call K21b especially a good target for atmospheric observations. And the researchers even have a way to pass the time before the James Webb Space Telescope launches. The scientists said in the statement they have acquired Spitzer Space Telescope's observations that may help pin down the temperatures of the planet's day and night side, clarifying how models may match reality. The research is described in a paper published November 3rd in the Journal of Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomy Society. That's pretty fucking cool. Basically, it's like Mustafar from Star Wars, but you are not stepping foot on this world. You are dead. It's cool, though. Just the idea of rock raining down, like it rains stone, or like there's silica glaciers. Like, I know, I mean, obviously, Alex, you and I will be long dead before we see any true space exploration, but we both love Star Wars. We both love Star Trek.
Short of some miraculous, industrial revolution into space, we'll be dead before anything really happens beyond our solar system.
I mean, can you just imagine that? Actually, quick sidebar. So I like to browse YouTube space, and I found out there were 2 probes that went to Venus in the 1980s and 70s. And I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but they were both sent by the Russian space program. Both of them carried microphones. Now, the first audio recording, the one YouTube channel that I found couldn't publish it to YouTube because it just doesn't exist. But the second audio recording of Venus, I've heard. And it's from the surface of Venus, where this probe survived a couple of hours before the pressure and the heat of this planet crushed it. And it is one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. It sounds like when you think of Venus, it's surprisingly calm. Like the winds there are anything like you'd have on a cool summer day with a slight breeze. Except in this slight summer breeze, the temperatures are about as hot as your oven.
And you boil like acid.
Yeah, you burst in the flame. But yeah, and I think the pressure is equivalent to Earth at that close to the surface, if I'm not mistaken. But it was just weird to hear stuff from another planet. And obviously we've heard planets like Jupiter, you can hear the magnetic field and stuff like that. But this is one of the only times where you've captured audio from another surface of a terrestrial body. I think they've done one for Mars, but don't quote me on that. I think that's incredibly cool. And I think, as we often talk on the show, I love science stories. I love talking about this stuff. And even my sister, Katie, did some stuff with, she's a citizen scientist, and did some stuff with the Kepler Space Telescope, and I think helped log exoplanets a couple of years ago, which is kind of cool. So I have a scientist in the family.
Yay!
So to speak. Yay! So from cool science to what the fuck are you doing? From the insider.com, a man was banned from Yellowstone after trying to fry chicken in a hot spring. A man from Idaho Falls, Idaho has not been publicly named, but has been banned from Yellowstone National Park for at least 2 years. Park rangers found him near Yellowstone's Shoshone Geyser Basin region with cooking pots and 2 chickens in a burlap sack in a hot spring on August 7th. He pled guilty to violating closures and use limits and was ordered to pay a $1,200 fine. A man from Idaho Falls, Idaho has been banned from Yellowstone for at least 2 years after he tried to fry chicken in a hot spring at the national park. The man, who has not yet been publicly named, was found by park rangers on August 7th with cooking pots, 2 chickens in a burlap sack in a hot spring near the Shoshone Geyser Basin region, the East Idaho News reports. Traveling through the thermal areas is prohibited in Yellowstone due to the risk of danger and injury, and this man was cited for violating closures and use limits. He pled guilty in the Mammoth Hot Springs court on September 10th and was fined $1,200. He was also ordered to serve 2 years of unsupervised probation, during which he'll be banned from Yellowstone National Park. 2 others in a group said the man had been traveling with were also cited by park rangers, East Idaho News reported. The status of their cases is unclear. Yellowstone warned people against getting too close to the hot springs in a statement to Insider. In thermal areas, always stay on boardwalks and on designated trails, said a spokesperson for the park told Insider. It is illegal to touch thermal features or throw objects into hot springs or other hydrothermal features. Water in hot springs can cause severe or fatal burns, and scalding water underlies most of the thin, breakable crust around the hot springs. Tourists have been seriously injured and killed by hot springs at Yellowstone, which can reach burning temperatures and are sometimes highly acidic. Just last month, a 3-year-old was badly burned after falling into a hot spring-like hydrothermal area. Last year, a 48-year-old man was burned when he fell into a hot spring. Another tourist was killed when he fell into a scalding hot spring in 2016. And I seem to remember this a couple years ago, where someone in Yellowstone, I think it was like they fell into one of the hot springs, and he melted or something.
I remember there was a guy that tried to do like a cartoon thing where he wanted to sit on like a trash can lid and see if it would make him fly into the air.
Yeah, I think we talked about it actually.
And then I think it hurt his bottom and he fell in and it cooked him like he was in a lava pit.
Yeah, like I remember covering something like this.
This might have been 2017. This might have been Nerd News when it was you and Blanchard.
Maybe.
This might have been 2015, 2016.
Because I remember talking about it. So stay the fuck away from nature. You can look at it, but stay away.
I know we've had ones. I don't think it was it another guy trying to cook something when we did it too?
Yeah, like I remember this story so clearly.
I don't think it was chicken. I think it was something else. This guy was trying to make s'mores or something stupid?
It was something dumb. So either way, don't fuck with nature lest ye get fucked. And this story, it can only come from Alex.
You're welcome. The final story, eh?
You can now legally compost dead bodies in Washington state.
Drop the mic, walk away.
In May 2019, legislators in Washington state passed a bill that would allow for greener funerary alternatives. Corpse composting. The bill went into effect a year later in May 2020.
The tomatoes taste like Grandpa.
As of November 1st, the first legal corpse composting company, Recompose, is officially accepting cadaver customers. The New York Times explained the details of the law at the time of its passing. Washington's new law, which takes effect in May 2020, will allow bodies to be placed in a receptacle along with an organic material like wood chips and straw to help speed up the natural transition of human remains into soil. Farmers use a similar process to compost the bodies of livestock. Recompose founder Katrina Spade, who helped spearhead the legal change, recently spoke with MIT Technology Review about the philosophy behind her business, which began with a trial of 6 bodies performed in conjunction with Washington State University. In 2017, Spade started Recompose, a Seattle-based human composting company, to carry out the service for any client willing and able to spend $5,500, which is still much cheaper than most funerals. For Spade, the business is all about fighting climate change. In America, cemeteries take up an estimated 1 million acres of land, caskets destroy 4 million acres of forest every year, and burials use 30 million boards of wood and over 800,000 gallons of embalming fluid. According to Troy Hodel, a sustainability analyst and advisor to Recompose, the carbon dioxide saved by composting one human comes to between 0.84 and 1.4 metric tons. 1 metric ton is equivalent to burning 1,100 pounds of coal or driving about 2,500 miles in a passenger car. She explains a bit more about the composting process as well. Each body goes into an individual vessel, which is like a cone container, and is laid into wood chips, alfalfa, and straw. This nice mixture of natural materials is covered with more of the same. The body is kind of cocooned, and it stays in that vessel for 30 days. As it's there, the microbes are breaking down the body and breaking down the wood chips, alfalfa, and straw to create this beautiful soil. We will have 10 of these units to begin. We'll be able to welcome 10 bodies per month. The Recompose company website is packed with information too. It makes sense that they want to provide people with so many details when it comes to such a new and difficult to talk about concept. But that transparency is also much better than what you think you get anywhere in the funeral industry, which certainly isn't going into detail about the 800,000 gallons of embalming fluid used each year and the cancerous carcinogens contained within that toxic syrup. Cadaver composing is not only better for the planet, but it's also better for the wallet, costing about $2,000 less than the average funeral. While it's understandable that people want to avoid talking about death, Spade's interview with the Tech Review is pretty fascinating, both in terms of environmental science and human culture. There also has been green funeral alternatives, such as the $3,000 Infinity burial suite from, I can't pronounce this company's name, which also uses flesh-eating mushrooms, but they don't handle the actual logistics of where the body goes, which Recompose does. You know what? I'm okay with this, actually.
We have a similar system. My best friend from high school died really young of cancer, and when he died, they cremated him. And part of the package deal they did was they got to plant a tree, and they used the ashes when they plant the tree as part of the fertilizer for the tree. So, like, my friend sort of lives on in a tree about 1 kilometer away from me.
That's kind of cool.
And that was sort of the first initiative they started doing, where it wasn't just like, oh, plant a tree in his name. It's like when they say
literally plant a tree.
Yeah, instead of people saying, oh, it's so and so's tree, it's not that. That's technically him. Like part of the tree's nutrients was him. So that was sort of, he was a little hippy dippy. He was very new age sort of thing, and I was like, there was nothing more fitting than that. So we've had that here for he's been gone. What is it now?
10 years, isn't it? It's been gone a while.
About 7 years.
Yeah,
7-8 years. So it's better part of a decade now. It's hard to believe. So like that. To me, like, it blew my mind. I'm like, that's a thing you can do legally, and they're like, yeah, you can't, like, here you can't, as far as I know, bury a body, but once you're cremated, you can spread your ashes anywhere, right? So they got permission from the city to plant a tree in the public park, and they dug up the hole, they mix in soil and fertilizer with the ashes, the remains, plant the tree, and then whenever you want, you can go see the tree.
I think I'd be okay with this. I mean, when I eventually do pass on, I'd be okay with this. I mean, I don't like the idea of cremation myself, but I like the idea of returning back to the planet in a natural way. And even the idea of being in a casket for all eternity, I think is a little fucked up.
I've never liked that. I'm not a big fan of that. Cremation, I'm fine with. I understand cremation is like, to me, it's like, I'm gone. So do with me what you will. If you can't use my organs, or if I can't be a donor, for science or helping whatever somebody else, if my liver can help some kid or my kidney, and I'm healthy enough and I can give it, and I don't have any other blood disorders or something, go ahead, do it. But I'm also like, I've said for years since I was a teenager, I was like, all right, here's what you do. You cremate me, you turn me into chicken spice, you have the wake for me and everything, and you sprinkle me in, and you feed me to all of my enemies, and I can take them out from the inside.
There was an old TWIG joke many, many, many moons ago, and it was our friend Luke from Australia, Lucreus, on Twitter. And I think he joked about the corpse of Space Michael Dodd. So when I die, I will be floating around the earth watching it as a silent protector. And when and if I ever feel the need to strike, I will fall from orbit as like a mighty meteor.
How perfect would that be that you like, okay, let's say logistics wise, you can't send your whole body up. Let's say you do accept cremation and they put your urn inside of a new satellite that they're launching up there that will then be used to broadcast satellite radio. You could be a part of radio forever.
I would love that. That would be a very awesome way to go. So when I die, Sirius, if you're still around.
And at 3 a.m. when Coast to Coast comes on, we can sometimes hear the ghost of Space Michael Dodd over the digital waves.
There we go. Birdman will indeed live forever.
Like you switch to the satellite radio and you can swear that in the background for a quick second you can hear motherfucker.
Oh boy. So that's the kind of show we have had for you this week in terms of the weird news. But we're going to take one final break here on the show. And we're going to take a look at some stuff that Alex had a chance to take a look from PDP. We will be back right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman. He's been Alex, the producer, and we'll be back right after this.
Just in time for the next gen release of the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, our friends at PDP Gaming sent over 2 of their play and charge battery kits for every Xbox, actually. They sent over a play and charge kit that includes 2 batteries, a charging cable. It uses micro because it actually plugs a micro USB cable into the battery itself that sort of juts out the back a little bit, instead of using the USB-C that is sort of standard on the new controllers play and charge. So you will stick it in there. It comes with a 10-foot cable though, which is great. And they're pretty beefy batteries. They seem to hold the charge quite well. And interestingly enough, to make them universal, something that you might not know is that the new revisions of the controllers that are shipping with the Series S and the Series X not only have a slightly different contour to the back, their back plate, where you plug the batteries into, is a different shape. So your old back plates won't fit, and if you get a lot of play and charge kits from third parties that aren't Microsoft themselves, and they're older ones or they haven't been revised, yeah, the batteries will fit, but the back plate that they give you might not, or it might be too thick for the back plate that's built into or that comes with the controller. So what they've done here is they include 2 back plates that are for Xbox One and One S and One X, and then they include 2 new ones as well that are specifically marked right on them for controllers from year 2020. It'll have a little marking on it, and that is what you would use with the new controllers. So that is really good that they included that, because in essence what they're able to do is reuse a product that's already been tested, works, and is considered quite good for third-party batteries, and they've made it so that they can just pop in a few new backings for it that fit the new controllers, and everything is hunky-dory and works great. They've also included with the set that they gave us, the Dual Ultra Slim Charge System. So this is a product that, again, comes with 4 back doors for, depending on the controllers, 2 for the 1 series and 2 for the X. And it's a very slim but fairly hefty charging platform that the controllers rest on. And what happens is those batteries go in, and with the new faceplates that you put on the back, they expose a charging platform pin. So sort of almost like a MagSafe thing, but it's not a MagSafe thing. You just drop it on top and it contacts and charges. So these controllers lay flat, and when they do on the base, the side will illuminate in color, and then once it's finished charging, it changes. Pretty standard stuff there, but it is a space-saving design. Interestingly enough, too, my concern with a lot of these third-party chargers is they'll slip around. They either have like a small rubber foot or no rubber feet. This has a part you peel off, and it's like, they call it a suction system, but it's like a sticky but not gummy silicone sort of thing. Like the stuff that's on the bottom of a lot of anti-slip silicone mats for your keyboards and mice, like wrist rests. So you can put that down on whatever surface you want, and it's not going to shift around on you. And the charging cable is not like a standard USB. You don't need like a wall wart for it. It comes with its own wall charger, and it plugs in through a DC jack. So less pins to get bent. It provides adequate power to charge both the controllers fairly quickly. I was trying it out with the current gen controllers we have here, and then I'll be swapping off the back plates for when the new controllers arrive. I'll have the black one that comes with the Series X, and I also ordered I think it's called Shock Blue, the only other color that's unique, which is their bluish controller. So I like the idea that I'll be able to swap controllers and just put the battery backing on it, and it's ready to go. Pretty well designed product, like I said, pretty cheap. The only thing would be the cable for the DC jack, the power adapter, is kind of short, depending on where you have it sitting. If it's sitting down low or near a wall outlet or near something else, it's fine. I actually had to use an extension cable, just a cheap dollar store one, to make it reach behind my my console setup, where I have it's sitting on top of my CD player and tape player. That tells you something about me, right? And it goes down behind into my UPS battery backup power supply. I actually have it plugged into the same extension cable that I plugged the PlayStation 5 official charging dock into, and that comes with a significantly longer power cable. So that's the only thing, is you might have to think about your placement or get an extension cord to plug it in. But once it's in, you're good to go. You're not using up any USB ports on on a wall wart, or plugging it into your system. It can just keep those free for plugging in external hard drives, which you might need to do to back up your games. So pretty good product, ready to go. It does say, like you'll see right on the side of it, that it's compatible with every system. The only thing that the charging dock is not, the dual ultra slim charging dock is not compatible with, is the Elite version 2 controller that I purchased. And that is because that has its own proprietary pinout system on the bottom. You can't change the battery in it. It's got a rechargeable lithium that plugs in through USB-C, and it has its own case that charges it anyway. So they do make note on there that doesn't work, but it's pretty obvious it wouldn't work anyway. So that being said, I'm glad that they're out. It's something ready to go for next gen. Surprised that Microsoft didn't have anything of their own ready to go at day one for this. But I am happy to say that PDP stepped up, and these are officially licensed products that work great.
Turn on that radio and back here. The cops ain't likely to catch up with us, not tonight. So we can all be quiet and peaceable and listen to the music.
All right, and that is the kind of show it has been here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. As always, we do thank you for joining us each and every week. Hopefully you have enjoyed our new website, which is currently... nothing's broken yet. It's worked pretty well.
Nothing's broken. I've had many in the middle of the night waking up panic attacks. Oh my God, are the email servers working? And they are.
So thankfully, everything is going through. We are starting to get rapid materials for our holiday gift guide, which once again goes live on December 7th. We will have some reviews and some other content during the month of December. Currently, I'm working on Cyberpunk Red for a review for the RPG. This is not the video game, but this is the RPG that the video game is based on. I reviewed Cyberpunk Red earlier this year and thought it was a tremendously fantastic product from R. Talsorian. I am also working on some video games that we will be talking about our holiday gift guide. We have like a document that we've been getting for things like this to work on. I actually, my Liam just moved in next door, so we're going to play some board games to talk about on the show, from Gale Force 9 and Modifius, stuff like that. One thing to update people on is I have been getting artwork done for the Stargate TWIG RPG actual play podcast, and a lot of the production elements are done. I just need the new and final rules, which will be released presumably this month or next month from Wyvern Gaming. And then once I get that done, we'll probably do like a session 0 which is an idea we're going to kind of borrow from the Terrible Warriors podcast, and we'll just kind of talk about our characters. We're not going to break down the math, but we'll talk about it.
It'll help us, learn the system, and everybody else can learn it too. It should be a fairly quicker pickup because
it's D&D 5th Ed.
I've played D&D. I've played something before.
Yeah, exactly. This will be a very easy system to learn. It's just learning determination points and redoing social encounters. It's just relearning some of the new skin that's been applied to the D&D 5th edition rules. So that's fairly cool. I've seen some of the promotional artwork we're having done up for the podcast, which looks really nice. I know Ori Falconer is working on our theme song. We should have more stuff to share in the coming weeks. Other than that, I'm trying to think of what else to talk about. Oh, so we are going to have a conversation. Me and Alex are going to do a prototype talking about Watch Dogs on the next generation consoles. We're going to have something on Assassin's Creed. We are having a first impressions look later on today. So look for that late today, early Tuesday. And that'll be us talking about our experiences with Valhalla so far. And then later on this week, we will have something for the new consoles. You're going to have to give us some time.
Yeah, the planning, just to give a little framework, is I'm making the trip out to pick up my systems physically. The goal is pick up the systems. There's no point. I was going to do unboxings. Everybody that got a console's already done it. So it's not going to be an unboxing, but I will have it where, I hook it up. I might have some pictures, a video of it running. I'll do a quick little blurb on, how fast it's loading my driver, how easy the interface is to use for me. Or if I have to find room for the systems, because that might be interesting. And we'll do a little first impression sort of thing. Expect the content to be rolling out. It'll be an interesting 2 weeks or so. We still want to slip in probably a Black Friday deals prototype special as well, where we can talk about what is on sale. Some of those flyers are starting to come out. Yeah,
so it's going to be interesting. I still have a bunch of RPG books to review from my various friends in the RPG industry. I start my next 3 courses on December 9th. Yay. I'm going to die, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be interesting, and it'll be good for you, man. As far as anything else, I recently received a package from Mill Creek, so I've got a couple interesting old horror films, some Hammer horror to look at.
Okay.
And I want to blast through that in the next day or two before the systems come, so that I can focus on the systems. But there's some stuff in the pipe that I'm expecting we'll probably get in the mail soon. And we'll sort of see. As far as next gen coverage go, we've sort of, I think we've talked about what games we're picking up ourselves to talk about.
Yeah, I bought I have Cyberpunk pre-ordered. I am getting Spider-Man day 1. And that's pretty much it for me. I mean, other than Valhalla and Watch Dogs.
Are you going to pick up Call of Duty? Because it comes out on Friday.
Oh, yeah. I'll have COD. I should have my code this week.
Okay, so you think we're going to do a review on it then?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know whether we're getting multiple copies, but I'll be able to talk about the gun mechanics.
If we do, it'll be something where we can play multiplayer together and try it out. And it's cross-platform this time, right?
Yes, it was been cross-platform since last year. So
okay, so and for me, I've got on day 1, I didn't pre-order anything for the Xbox because I've already got Xbox copies of games that are going to be reviewed. Where we've already talked about how we're getting next gen, automatic smart delivery on some of them. But for the PlayStation, I have Demon's Souls, which that may be a game I'll check out, try to stream, and I have 5 days to do the satisfaction guarantee at EB Games because I'm an Onyx member. If it's truly beyond my current skill level. I at least have that option, and I would probably, if that was the case and we didn't get 2 copies of Call of Duty, I might swap it for Call of Duty. And the other is Sackboy, which I'm pretty excited to play. I've been waiting for a nice, good platformer. Crash Bandicoot's great. Mario's been great, but it's nice to sort of see what a next-gen platformer can be like.
Yeah, so we have got a lot of things planned here on the site. We are working on reviving our Twitch streams. We've had graphics made. We're going to be looking into getting some overlays made, and you will see stuff us coming on PC and other consoles in the near future. So
just know that it's baby steps for us. I am very technically inclined for filming, editing, all the stuff in traditional filmmaking, and you are inclined.
I'm a producer.
Produced, and when it comes to audio, you know your engineering stuff too. We have the traditional thing. The one thing for us being super nerdy is we've never really dipped our toes into the realm of proper streaming with all these OBS setups and everything. So it is something completely new, and we're becoming old men.
Yeah,
so,
we really are.
So it's going to take a bit for us so it'll be baby steps, but you know what? It's a fun new experience for us.
Exactly. And with them all built into the next generation of consoles with our gigabyte internet, we're going to be set. Yeah. So anyway, so until next time here on the show, next week, we will have a bunch of fun things that you can check out. Keep it locked to ThisWeekInGeek.net for more great geek content. And until next time, we have been
Alex, the producer.
I've been Mike, the Birdman, saying be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys again next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.